We tend to think of old age as a story of loss. We lose speed, we lose flexibility, and of course, we lose strength. The muscles that served us faithfully throughout our lives seem to begin to betray us. But what if I told you that one of the surest signs that you are aging exceptionally well and are destined for a long, healthy life is sitting right in the palm of your hand? This story began in a sun-drenched kitchen that smelled of apple pie and freshly brewed tea. 75-year-old Clara was watching her grandson Mark, a 28-year-old software developer who escaped his digital world once a week to visit his grandmother. Mark was a good kid, tall, strong. He went to the gym regularly, and his biceps spoke volumes about it. On this particular day, he faced an enemy he could not defeat. It was an ordinary glass jar of cherry jam, but its metal lid seemed to have been welded shut. Mark grunted, his face turning red with effort. He wrapped the lid in a towel for a better grip, the veins on his forearm bulging. The jar wouldn't yield. He tried tapping it with a spoon, prying the lid with a knife, all to no avail. Finally, with a sigh of defeat, he placed the jar on the table. "Grandma, I don't know what they do to these jars at the factory," he said, trying to catch his breath. "I think only the Hulk could open this." Clara chuckled with her quiet, wise smile. She walked over to the table, wiping her hands on her apron. Her hands, they were a map of her life. The skin was thin, covered with a network of wrinkles and age spots, but her fingers were long and straight, her joints not twisted by arthritis. She took the jar in one hand and gripped the lid with the other. There was no jerking, no visible strain. She simply took it, gave a short, confident, twisting motion, and pop. The loud, distinct sound of the vacuum seal breaking shattered the silence. The lid was open. Mark stared, mouth agape, from the jar to his grandmother. "How? I was using my whole body weight." "The secret isn't in the force, dear," Clara said with a wink. "It's in the right kind of effort." But Mark only saw a clever trick. He didn't understand that he had just witnessed one of the most powerful and scientifically validated signs of health and longevity: her grip strength. Scientists around the world have long concluded that the force a person can generate by squeezing their hand is not just an indicator of hand muscle health. It is an accurate barometer of the body's overall condition. Studies show that in older adults, grip strength is directly linked to bone density, overall muscle tone, and, most surprisingly, the health of the heart and blood vessels. A weak grip is often an early predictor of numerous problems, while a firm, confident handshake is a silent declaration from the body: "I'm still in the game. My systems are working in harmony." So, what was Clara's secret? She never went to a gym. Her exercise equipment was her house and her garden. Her strength wasn't artificial, pumped up for appearance, but functional, forged through decades of daily tasks. Every spring, she would turn the soil in her garden beds with her own hands, her fingers kneading the dense clumps of earth. Every summer, she would spend hours pulling weeds, uprooting stubborn roots. She carried full watering cans, not using a hose. She walked to the market herself and insisted on carrying the bags of vegetables and milk, considering it a good warm-up. When she baked her famous bread, she would knead the stiff dough for half an hour, developing strength not only in her hands, but in her shoulders as well. People nowadays think too much about special exercises. She once told Mark, they'll run a marathon, but then they can't lift a sack of potatoes. Strength is found in life. The hands must remember their work. If you stop working with them, they will forget everything. That pop of the opening jar was more than just a sound. It was a symphony of health. It was the sound of strong muscles, healthy bones, and a heart that works without fail. Clara's firm grip was a reflection of her firm grip on life itself. And this was the first, most obvious sign that her story was going to be a very, very long one. If you had to predict how long and how well a person would live, you would probably want to look at their medical chart. But scientists have discovered a simpler and perhaps more accurate way. Just watch them walk. Not how they run a marathon or lift weights, but their ordinary, everyday gait. Hidden within this simple mechanic of movement is one of the most eloquent secrets to longevity. David was 80, and his alarm clock was the sun. Every morning, as the first rays of light broke through the blinds, he was already lacing up his well-worn sneakers. His route never changed. 3 laps around the large park near his house. He was not an athlete. He didn't wear fancy sportswear or expensive gadgets that measured his heart rate. He was just a man in comfortable pants and an old windbreaker who had come out to get some fresh morning air. But there was something about him that made people turn their heads. His walk. He wasn't running or even power walking in the athletic sense. He was simply walking, but his natural cruising pace was such that he easily overtook others. Here he was, drawing level with a couple in their 50s who were striding along briskly, chatting animatedly. David nodded to them with a smile and, without changing his rhythm, smoothly pulled ahead. A few minutes later, he caught up with a young man who was on his morning run, but had clearly run out of steam and slowed to a walk, breathing heavily. David passed him like an icebreaker passing a small boat, steadily, powerfully, and with no visible effort. His back was straight, his arms moved in time with his steps, and his breathing remained calm. He wasn't looking at his feet. He was looking at the world around him, at the waking trees, at the dogs joyfully chasing balls, at the sky changing color from gray to gold. What onlookers saw was not just an energetic old man's walk. It was a living demonstration of a scientific phenomenon that gerontologists call gait speed. For decades, they have studied this metric and concluded that it is one of the most important vital signs, no less significant than blood pressure or heart rate. The speed at which an older person walks, at their natural pace, predicts their future with astonishing accuracy. A faster gait is directly linked to a lower risk of cardiovascular disease, a reduced likelihood of hospitalization, and, ultimately, a longer life expectancy. But that's not even the most interesting part. A brisk walk is a sign not only of a healthy body, but also of a sharp, well-functioning mind. Think about what it takes to simply take a step. The brain must instantly process information from the eyes and vestibular system, coordinate the work of hundreds of muscles in the legs, back, and arms, maintain balance, and simultaneously analyze the surrounding environment. It is an incredibly complex neurophysiological process. That is why a slowdown in walking speed often becomes one of the first, earliest signs of cognitive decline. David's brisk, confident stride was proof that his brain was firing on all cylinders, and the connection between his neurons was as strong as the muscles in his legs. One day, the same breathless young runner he had overtaken in the park asked him, "What's your secret? Do you do some kind of special sport?" David laughed. "My secret is consistency. I just leave the house every day. In rain, in snow, in heat. My legs aren't just transportation to get me from the couch to the refrigerator. They are for exploring the world. The day I stop walking will be the day I stop living. Every step is my yes to the new day." Unlike the story of Eleanor from our previous narrative, who forced herself to walk through pain, David never waged war against his body. He listened to it. His speed was the result not of self-abuse, but of decades of harmonious cooperation with his body. He wasn't setting records. He was simply living in motion. His quick steps were not just carrying him along the park paths. They were confidently carrying him towards his 90th birthday and beyond. And this was the second undeniable sign that he was aging exceptionally well, preserving in unison the health of his body and the clarity of his mind. We have already seen that the secret to a long and healthy life can be found in the strength of our hands and the speed of our steps. But the next sign of exceptional aging is hidden not in our muscles or our bones. It can be found in our phone books, in calendars filled with appointments, and in the warmth of a shared cup of coffee with a friend. It is the power of human connection. Meet Isabella. At 78, she was a person who was almost impossible to find alone. Her life was like a bustling intersection where the paths of different people constantly crossed, and she was the most skillful traffic controller on it. Her adult children often joked that to see their mother, they needed to book an appointment 2 weeks in advance, and that wasn't far from the truth. On Mondays, Isabella had her book club. This wasn't just a tea party with gossip. These were fierce but friendly debates about literature, history, and the meaning of life. Isabella, with sparkling eyes, could quote the classics, argue about characters' motives, and listen attentively to others' opinions. Each such meeting was a complex workout for her brain, forcing it to form new neural connections, recall facts, and analyze information. On Wednesdays, she volunteered at the local library in the children's section. The little ones adored her for her ability to tell stories in different voices and for her endless patience. For Isabella, this was more than just a hobby. It was a sense of purpose. She knew that on this day, she was expected, that she was needed. This simple feeling of being useful filled her with an energy that no vitamin supplement could provide. On Fridays, she would talk on the phone for hours with her high school friend who had moved to the other side of the country. They shared news, supported each other, laughed, and complained. This conversation was her emotional anchor, her therapy. It reminded her that her history, her past, was alive and valuable. Isabella was the complete opposite of Margaret from our previous story. While Margaret built a fortress of silence around herself to protect herself from the world, Isabella had spent her life building bridges. She intuitively understood what modern science now proves in hundreds of studies. Humans are social creatures, and isolation is as detrimental to us as smoking or obesity. When we feel lonely, our body goes into fight or flight mode. It starts producing stress hormones like cortisol, which raises blood pressure and blood sugar levels, causes chronic inflammation, and weakens the immune system. Chronic loneliness is a silent killer that slowly undermines the foundation of our health. Strong social connections, on the other hand, are the most powerful protective shield. Live communication, laughter, hugs. All of these triggers the production of happiness hormones like oxytocin, which reduces stress levels and strengthens the heart. The need to remember names, stories, the birthdays of friends and their children. This is a constant, natural memory exercise. A sense of belonging to a group, to a family, to a community gives us the psychological resilience to cope with life's difficulties. The immune system of a person surrounded by care and communication works many times more effectively. My friends and my family are my garden, Isabella loved to say. You can't just sit and wait for it to bloom. You have to tend to it. You have to call. You have to visit. You have to listen when someone is down. Every kind conversation is like watering a flower. It keeps them alive. And it keeps me alive. Her packed calendar was not a sign of restlessness. It was a sign of a life lived to the fullest. Her robust health was the result not only of good genetics or a proper diet. It was co-created and sustained by love, friendship, and communication. The laughter she shared with her friends was as vital to her as any vitamin. And this feeling of deep connection to the world was the third, invisible, yet incredibly powerful sign that her journey through life would be very long and happy. What if I told you that one of the most accurate tests for longevity is not conducted in a high-tech laboratory and requires no blood work? That you most likely performed this test with ease as a child, but have perhaps long forgotten it. I'm talking about a simple movement that most of us learn as toddlers, sitting down on the floor and getting back up. It sounds ridiculously simple, but within this simplicity lies a profound truth about the real biological age of our bodies. Ben was 72, and he was in his element, on the floor, surrounded by colorful Lego bricks and his 6-year-old grandson. A noisy family celebration was in full swing, but Ben had found a quiet corner to build the world's tallest tower with the boy. When the game came to an end and his grandmother called everyone for cake, Ben's son, 45-year-old Robert, got up from the couch. He let out a characteristic groan, pressed both hands on his knees, and straightened up with effort. Walking over to his father, he offered a hand. "Dad, let me help you up." Ben looked at the outstretched hand, then at his son, and a mischievous glint appeared in his eyes. "Thanks, son, but I can still manage on my own," he replied. And then, in front of the whole family, he did it. Without changing his position, he crossed his legs in a crisscross applesauce style. Then, without the slightest jerk, not using hands, knees, or forearms for support, he smoothly lowered himself to a sitting position on the floor. After sitting for a moment with a perfectly straight back, he began the reverse movement. Rocking forward slightly, he pushed off the floor with his legs, and just as smoothly, without any support, rose to a standing position. The movement was a single, graceful, and completely silent motion. Robert stared at him in amazement. "Wait, how did you do that? I probably couldn't do that even when I was in high school." This was not just a fun trick to impress the family. Ben, without knowing it, had just passed a clinical assessment known as the Sitting Rising Test, SRTE, with a perfect score. This test was developed by a group of Brazilian physicians as a quick and surprisingly accurate way to assess musculoskeletal health and predict life expectancy. The scoring system is simple. You start with 10 points for each use of a support. a hand, a knee, a forearm, the side of your leg. 1 point is deducted. For a loss of balance, half a point is deducted. Dozens of studies conducted in recent years have shown a staggering correlation. People with low scores, less than 8, had a 5 to 6 times higher risk of dying within the next few years compared to those who scored a perfect 10. Why is this simple test so predictive? Because it's not just a test of leg strength. It's a comprehensive report card on the state of your entire body. To perform it perfectly, you need a whole set of qualities. First, musculoskeletal strength, strong leg and core muscles to lift your own body weight. Second, flexibility, good mobility in the hip, knee, and ankle joints. And third, most importantly, balance and coordination. Your brain's ability to impeccably control your body in space. All three of these components are key to preventing falls, one of the leading causes of injury, loss of independence, and mortality in older adults. Ben's ability to get up from the floor with ease was a declaration of his body's health. It said that his muscles were toned, his joints were mobile, and his brain was in perfect control of every movement. People think you need some complicated workouts to be healthy in old age. He later explained to his son, "But I just spend 10 minutes on the floor every morning. I lay out a mat, do a little stretching, a few simple yoga poses I saw on TV. I just don't let my body forget how to move." We lose these abilities not because we get old. We get old because we lose these abilities by stopping using them. The floor isn't an enemy to be feared. It's a friend that helps you stay young. A simple daily ritual that requires no money and no special equipment. Just the habit of greeting your body every morning. Ben's ability to get up from the floor was a powerful statement of his independence and vitality. It was a sign that he wasn't just aging, but aging well, maintaining the fundamental movements that define human freedom. This ability was his invisible shield against frailty and a promise of many more years of active, independent life. It was the fourth sure sign that his body was built to last. We have looked for the signs of a long life in the strength of our hands, the speed of our feet, the warmth of our friendships, and the resilience of our bodies. But the final and perhaps most important sign of exceptional aging is not something you can measure with a stopwatch or a dynamometer. It is measured in curiosity, in the ability to laugh at hardships, and in the unwavering belief that the best day is tomorrow. Sophia was 85 years old. If you were to imagine a typical woman her age, you would probably conjure an image of a quiet old lady in a rocking chair, dozing over her knitting or reminiscing about the days of her long-gone youth. Sophia refuted this stereotype with her very existence. When her granddaughter entered her room, she was indeed sitting in a cozy armchair, but she wasn't dozing. With a slight frown of concentration, she was intently focused on her smartphone screen, muttering something to herself in an unfamiliar language. "Grandma, what are you doing?" her granddaughter asked with a smile. Sophia looked up from the screen, and her eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "I'm learning Italian." "Ciao, Bella. I've always dreamed of seeing Venice, and I want to order my own real gelato when I get there." Her granddaughter was momentarily taken aback. That's great, Grandma. But a trip to Italy, and why not?" Sophia replied without a hint of doubt. The future is still a very big place. Dreams don't have an age limit. Sophia's life had not been easy. She had lived through war as a child, the loss of her husband in middle age, and financial hardships that would have hardened anyone. Her optimism was not a naive belief that everything would always be fine. It was a strength forged in trials, a conscious choice. She wasn't happy because she was lucky. She was happy in spite of it all. And this psychological resilience was the fifth most powerful sign of her future longevity. The Italian lessons Sophia was taking were more than just a hobby for her body. They were a potent medicine. Modern science is delving deeper into the connection between our mind and body, and the conclusions are astonishing. Our thoughts, emotions, and attitude towards life directly affect our physical health. A positive attitude, curiosity, and a sense of purpose are not just pleasant feelings. They are powerful biological regulators. When we experience stress, anger, or despair, our body produces the hormone cortisol. In the short term, it is useful, but chronically high levels are poison to an aging body. It weakens the immune system, raises blood pressure, destroys brain cells, and promotes fat storage. The optimism and sense of purpose, like Sophia's, act as a natural shield that prevents cortisol from destroying the body from within. Moreover, studies show that a positive outlook reduces the level of chronic inflammation in the body. The main culprit behind most age-related diseases, from arthritis to heart conditions. At the deepest cellular level, scientists have discovered that stress shortens telomeres, the protective caps on our chromosomes. When telomeres become too short, the cell stops dividing and ages. Optimism and stress management practices, on the other hand, help maintain telomere length, literally slowing down the aging process. At the DNA level, people often ask me what my secret is. Sophia would say, "The secret is in the choice you make every morning when you wake up. You can look in the mirror and see wrinkles, or you can see a map of a life well lived. You can complain about the ache in your knee, or you can be grateful that you are still here to feel it. I don't have time to be old. I'm too busy learning something new." Her strength was in her focus on the future. The trip to Italy was not just a fantasy, it was a goal that made her train her brain every day, learn something new, and move forward. Sophia's story is the final and most important piece of our puzzle. A strong body is a wonderful gift, but a strong and optimistic spirit is what truly fuels a long and happy life. All 5 signs we have discussed: Clara's grip strength, David's brisk walk, Isabella's social connections, Ben's flexibility, and Sophia's optimism, do not exist in isolation. They are intricately intertwined. Sophia's optimism motivates her to stay connected with people, like Isabella. Connection motivates her to be active, like David. Activity maintains her flexibility, like Ben. And all of this together builds her overall life force, like Clara's. The main conclusion is simple. A long and healthy life is not something that happens to us. It is something we build every day with our hands, our feet, our hearts, and most importantly, our minds.